Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to showcase a little tool from the BIM Manager Suite called Shared Parameter Manager. Before we begin, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions using the questions panel brought to you by the app, and I will do my best to answer those as we progress throughout the webinar. And we'll certainly make time at the end to answer any and all remaining questions at that time. As always, this is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel shortly after the presentation has completed, sometime later today or tomorrow. With that said, let's get started. So, as many of you do know, and working with Revit for a while, shared parameter management is quite a painful task. And quite frankly, we've all got better things to do than poke our way through a text file and try to organize things, or pick and click through Revit's offering of a shared parameter management utility that we really, you see one thing and you keep going, right? And it's really quite painful. And to make changes and to replace things, or just to get new, these parameters added to a project or to a family, can take you a ton of time. And what if someone decides to make their own shared parameter for whatever reason? Or now you've got two different shared parameter files, or maybe you thought that was the way to do it back when you first started, and now you've got two different versions of the same file. One's got some parameters in it, one's got others. You're not sure which one you should be going with. And then how do you bring the two together, right? So managing and taking care of your parameters files kind of stinks. So today, we're going to cover our tool, Shared Parameter Manager, that will help you do all of that in one little app. Nice and easy. We've got ways to make it easy to read, better to understand what's going on, view the duplicates, view the conflicts, some naming issues, and such. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to show you about the app, how to get around it, where things are located, how things work, and going to compare a couple of different shared parameter files with each other, how to merge things together, how to create new parameters, and then ultimately how to review that information and then load it into a project and or a family. So, as you may know, I don't do PowerPoints, I do demos. So here we go. Now, just a quick little review for those of you that aren't terribly familiar with how Revit does it. Everything that Revit does is in your shared parameter window. So if you don't know, so on the Manage tab, you click Shared Parameters, you go find your shared parameter file, right? And I've just got this quick little copy down here, and I'll go with my master. Editing this file this way, it's kind of painful. It's one group at a time. Within each group, you see a list of parameters, and then if you need to review anything about it, it's here. You can't change it. It's all grayed out. It's locked down, obviously, because a change warrants a new ID or a new GUID, which then involves updating the project and all your families, which can be painful. We've got tools to help with that, but it can be painful making changes or moving things around. So creating a new parameter, you type it out. If you did it wrong, you got to delete it and do it again. Can't edit it. So it becomes, we'll just do the CDB sample as text, but I wanted that to be material property. So I can't just change that. There's no edit button. Delete and recreate. So shared parameter file editing management is, we'll just say it's a challenge. And then what if you had another parameter file? You'd have to open that up special, look at that stuff, remember what the settings are to rebuild it from scratch in your proper parameter file. Forget trying to merge things together, or open it up in Notepad, or Notepad++, I should say, and try manipulating it that way, which no one recommends doing ultimately, because there's too much room for error. So on our BIM Manager Suite, which is on the CTC Management tab when you get our tools installed, we have this nice tool here called Shared Parameter Manager. So this interface that we're going to see here gives us the opportunity to load up our master shared parameter file and manage it. First and foremost, I can add parameters. I can move things around from one group to the next. I can delete stuff. I can add information. I can search for things. We can create new groups and restructure a few items. So if you've got an existing parameter file, if you've never made a shared parameter file before, or you want to start over, start from scratch and kind of piece one together, you can do that. So you can hit new, specify the new parameter file, and we'll call it CTC demo. That makes the new file, and now I can create my new group, and I can batch add all the groups at once. I can use the default groups that Revit has and create a list based off those, right? So this is kind of that stock out of the box, the basic of the basic, and get going with that right out of the gate. If I need to build my own, I can build my own, no big deal. And now I can select individual groups and add parameters, just like you would normally. Now the interface is a little different because this supports the batch creation of parameters. So if there were a half a dozen or 24 dimensional type parameters that you needed to create, you could do that right now and add them all at the same time. So for example, I want to do a batch add, and I can just type in all the parameter names. So maybe I wanted product width and product length, and the list goes on, right? I could do this for days. Product everything. There, and we'll keep it at that. So I'll do the 4. I can make them editable or invisible, so I want to be able to control it. No one can touch it. I have options to manipulate these a little bit. Change what type of parameter they are. In this case, I want length. Discipline's always common then. And where do you want it grouped? Hit create. It builds all of those right away in the file. And already now I've saved myself 5 minutes just by batch adding those 4 parameters. So even on the creation side from scratch, you can build out a shared parameter file in a fraction of the time that it would have taken you normally. And then you just go on, define it as necessary. And if there's categories in here that you no longer need because you're not going to use them, then go for it and delete them. There's no need. So if I'm not going to do any analysis, I'll delete those groups. I'm not going to put parameters there, move on. It's not the end of the world to have empty groups in here, but it muddies things up a little bit. So get rid of it if you're not using it. And then you just save it. Save, done. Moving on. Now I can load it into Revit and or reference it when I build my content, and away we go. So now let's do this. Let's take another example here. I need to build a new family that utilizes those parameters that I just made. So I'm gonna got ahead of myself here. New family, and let's say I'm gonna build just a generic component here for starters. I need those 4 parameters in this family. Well, good old days, I now have to go grab my shared parameter and project parameter, make sure, first I got to map it because I didn't do that. And there it is. I've got everything I need. All my dimensions are here. To add it, go through family types, add parameter, or if it's an annotation, you create the label, add the parameter that way. With our tool, with Shared Parameter Manager, I can just grab all 4 of those and load them in at the same time. So I'll go grab my demo file, and I jumped the gun. I need to open my demo file from the Load tab. We have this Load Shared Parameter tab. So you specify your shared parameter file, shows all the parameters. You grab the category that you want. So I'm going to make a new set, and we just add it over, and we'll call it dimensions for now. We can call it anything you want. Dimension, can't type today. And now I can grab the group, add it over. It will bring all of the parameters along for the ride if you wanted everything. If you don't want all of them, you don't have to bring them all over. I could have just brought over these 2, and that works okay too. So it's entirely up to you how you set it up. I'm going to grab the rest. And what I can do here is define what these properties or how these parameters need to function within the family. I can change the type. It tells me what discipline and the type of parameter is. I can change, or I can specify how I want it grouped. Where do I want these to appear in the parameters or in family types? And is it instance or type at this point? So I can grab all 4 of these, and I can grab them all and set them up. So I'm going to group these, under dimensions, like so. And they don't all have to be dimensions, obviously. They can be whatever grouping that you want. This is just for organizational purposes. And instance or type. All of them I want to be as type. So I'm going to grab them all that way. And now I'm happy. If I had more parameters at my disposal, I can add those to the list here as well and properly define those for use in the family or in the project. And I can hit load. And now it's going to load all of the parameters from the dimension selection set, which I made first, and throw them into my project. And now they're all there. They're all in there as a shared parameter in the currently open family. And that's it. And if my family types popped open over here, but here they are. They're all there, ready for me to use. So you're building a new family and you've got stock parameters that you need to use in that family. Let's batch load them all in. If I were building door families, I have dozens of shared parameters that I use, just so I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. It's all in a shared parameter file. I just batch load them all in, and now I can build the door. You could easily just edit that door family or one of your door families and do a save as, and now you've got everything that you need and some extras. So this is just a quick way to start with a clean slate, batch load everything in. I'm going to jump back to my my project file here. Oop, I didn't want to close that. Back to the project file here, and go back to my shared parameter manager tool. And there's a few other things we can do with this. That's not it. So in addition to creating and or manipulating a shared parameter file and then loading those into a file, I can also compare shared parameter files here. So maybe you find a couple of different versions of, or a couple of different parameter files on your network. You've got your master parameter file, and then maybe you've got some office building parameter file that you've noticed here, or another company shared, or some other company. You can compare the two together side by side and check for differences or conflicts or similarities to see what's going on here. So I browsed and selected the one on one side. I can grab any one of these other ones for the other half. So I'm going to grab this office building here, and it's noticing that there's some duplicates already. So these duplicates happened to be inside of the parameter file that I just loaded in. And I know that because I made it. So if you made it, you would probably know that too. But what I get to do here now is you can see there's clearly differences between the two. This list is much longer than the other. But what's different about them other than the obvious missing groups? We can check to see if there's any GUID conflicts or naming conflicts here, or check for which ones are actually unique parameters in each list and where we have duplicates. So by selecting these, it'll highlight in a certain color what's what. So in red is a conflict. So that typically means then I've got the same thing in both places, or the same GUID being used in both places. We've got unique. So now we see all the uniqueness and where we've got parameters that could be brought one way or the other. If we wanted to merge some of these together, we have a way to do that now. And I can check for duplicates. Where do we have the same thing? And we have a filter here to show just duplicates. So these are dead on the same angle parameter and the same radius parameter and thickness. And then there's a number of other duplicates found throughout. So if I wanted to combine these a bit and try to figure out where, what ones do I actually need, whether it's filtering by unique or not filtering at all, and you just happen to see, hey, I need that parameter in my parameter file here, you can grab those and load them in as you want. So let's say we'll go to graphics here, and I want to bring in these 4: casters, chamfered legs, cutout, and doors. And I want to also put them into graphics. So I'll come over here, I will grab my graphics piece, and for these 4, I can simply drag them over, hover on top of the category of your choosing, and let go. And it's going to bring them over. That simple. So if I'm going to minimize this again, expand my graphics, and they should all be here in my list. And now they're filtered out automatically because it's showing unique. They're no longer unique. Now we've got duplicates. Actually, if I switch it to duplicates and only show duplicates, it should pull those up. There they are. So I just created a duplicate, but that was intended because I wanted to extract those from the other parameter file into my new master. And if that's all I needed to do, now I can hit save and I'm done. My parameter file's got what I need it to. Maybe I find a few things in here that I don't need anymore. You can delete them. Maybe there's some stuff that you notice is wrong. Rename it. Yes, you'll have to do some editing later on with if it's used in a project already or used in content already. But you can do that and update your content with the modifications that you've made, whether it's with this tool and pushing them into the family or project, or utilize another one of our tools called Family Processor to replace them, also found in the Manager Suite here. So a lot of good, powerful things that can be done to consolidate the use of multiple parameter files, because oftentimes you'll find, I've been around various places where they're using a parameter file for a particular project. And I understand that, especially if it's very much owner-driven type of project, or client specific. They've kind of got their set standard and way of doing things, but so do we. I've got my set standard. There's a certain way I like to do things, and how do I try to marry those two together at times, because we still need to document it one way, but they need to document it and modeled a certain way. So this is one way to kind of bring the two together, especially if it's happening on a regular basis with that particular owner or client of yours. Last thing I want to really point out here today is some different ways to get access to parameters and then review that information. right? So all your projects have shared parameters in them. Many of your families will have shared parameters in them. Maybe I need to extract those, right? So maybe we want to pull some of the shared parameters out of the families that we were using in a project and merge those into our standard parameter file, because they're good families. Let's piggyback off those and use them. Well, we can export those from the project file and from the families in the project, get a shared parameter file generated from those, and either use that as the new standard or merge that in with our company standard. So there's these two export options here. Depending on which one you pick, you're going to get a shared parameter file. One will have more. It'll take a little longer if you do the one with families. We'll do demo project this time. I'll export that. And it's just going to create another shared parameter file formatted exactly the way you want. And you have the opportunity to, right out of the gate, open that when it's done and instantly compare it with a shared parameter file with your master that you've already got open. So you can run a comparison side by side, see what's unique about the two, begin the process of pressing and dragging and merging things together, and work with it as you need to. Maybe you don't need to bring anything, in which case you're very well set up, and I applaud you. And so that export will actually only grab shared parameters. That's what it's looking for. It's not creating any new stuff for you. So it's not going to take a family parameter, for example, or a project parameter that was manually created and turn it into a shared parameter. It's specifically looking for shared parameters to be exported. And so you'll be able, because it needs that back-end definition to help out with all that stuff. So it's effectively just doing the extraction for you that you could do on your own, one at a time, one family at a time, or one project at a time. So you wouldn't be able to kind of do both together at the same time. Now, my status bar did pop off the screen here. It's kind of hiding on this other page. There we go. So it takes a few minutes, but if you think about it, we've got potentially thousands of instances of families placed and things used and however many project parameters defined. So here it is. It generates my text file for me. And if I say yes now, it's going to, and I've got my master. So yeah, let's save those changes. Okay, thank you. All right. So my master is So my master got switched out with the demo project that I just exported. So I'm going to go back over here and open my master this way. And I still have my filter looking for duplicates. So at the moment, based on my master parameter file and what I just exported from the project, I've got one duplicate, which is pretty good. But that just means then that every single parameter that came out of this project file is not in my shared parameter file. So I'm either using the wrong one, or where did this project file come from, right? So I've got some work to do potentially, or maybe this is one of those client-specific or owner-specific type projects that will have a lot of uniqueness built into it. Last but not least is the review process. So if any of you have tried to read a shared parameter file, you'll know that it's not always easy to read. So if I'll just go ahead and open one of these text files here. And this is what you get, right? This is hard to work with. And, I would never recommend trying to open this and edit it here. And to be honest, you'll probably break something. And no one at Autodesk will recommend that either. And they tell you right off the top, do not edit this manually because you'll probably break it. And the GUIDs are auto-generated, tied to the parameter names and the groupings and all that stuff. Like everything's fully unique. Don't touch it this way. But even as it's a review process, like this is still hard to understand. Things are shifting all over the place. Nothing lines up with the header. that's defined for it. So what we've done is we've built a conversion tool into Parameter Manager so that you can at least see what you've got in an Excel file, which in a lot of cases for people is a lot easier to read and understand than a parameter window, a text file, or even this. So I'm going to convert that to a spreadsheet now. So demo project. And then I'm going to open my Excel file. And that happens lightning fast. And here we go. Breaks it into 2 tabs. We've got a groups tab, lists all the groups that were found in that parameter file. And then we've got a parameter tab. Gives you the GUID, parameter name, what type of parameter it is, what group number it was given, which you can correlate back to the group tab and see what those fall into, and all of the other, ones and zeros and everything else that's like that, that's there. This is it. It's that simple. And it's just to help you see what's going on. Again, there's not a lot we're going to do with this. I don't have a way to convert this back to a parameter file to be used inside of my projects or my content. It's just a review tool. You can add your sort and filters to this to kind of navigate around and see where things are, maybe do some additional checking and whatnot. That's all it's for. Came from a request from a customer. I liked it. We put it in. So that's how that works. Yeah, and I forgot one last thing. We can take it an extra step further, and you can configure your own parameter group defaults so that if you wanted to apply those to a parameter file or use it to create a new one, you can do that. So we have the ability to specify what parameter types are appropriate for what groups, and you can press in, you can just go ahead and start dragging and dropping things across, putting certain types with certain groups so that when you run a check later on for conflicts, this is one of those checks that it can do and flag things for you. So if I remove that from the list and I say use defaults, just to show you, it's going to add a few things to a few places. Then if I apply that to a parameter file to check for conflicts, and if I've got these, parameter types associated with different parameter groups, I'm going to get yelled at. It's going to show up in my list. It's going to be nice and big and red. So another great way to kind of standardize your file a little bit more, keep things in as usable and as easy to read and understand as possible. So, and the great thing about it is you can do it all in one tool, right? And it's super simple, works really quick. Part of the BIM Manager Suite, everybody's favorite suite. So, at least my favorite suite, I should say. That concludes everything today. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for joining. Look forward to seeing you next week.